go-getter and free thinker, very independent. He had his own house, 2 jobs, and was doing very well. Right before the accident, he had been made supervisor at work. So he had taken a week off and to get things straightened out, and that's when he had the accident. My husband went to get the phone. He said, "We get up, get dressed." He said, that was a kid that just called and said, "You guys better get here." He says he's laying on the side of the road. And I just picked up his phone and pressed the mom button. We don't know if he's alive or dead. Jumped in the vehicle and headed down. We ran up and one of the officers stopped us and said, "Wait a minute, you can't go there." And I said, "I think that's my son." I could just see at a distance that the bike was smashed. I didn't know at the time whether he had his helmet on or not. And of course you always hear people don't survive, a motorcycle accident. So of course I was praying that whatever happened, that he would survive. So I told the officer, I said, "Look, if you think my son is gonna die, can you please just let me go say goodbye?" He said, "I'm sorry, we can't do that. They're getting ready to take him." Every time I remember it, it seems like a slow motion movie. Because I see the helicopter landing and I see them tending to my son and I see him getting put on the stretcher. Once we got to the hospital, the sheriff came in and said Kuna's motorcycle had slammed on the side of the car, and he had gone in the air and then rolled, and his head hit the curb. He had his helmet on, and at that time the cop gave me his helmet and said, "Here's his helmet," and I'm thinking, okay, but he said this is what saved his life. He said if he hadn't had a helmet on, he'd be planning a funeral. We waited and waited and waited, and then the doctor finally came out about 5, 6 o'clock in the morning and said, "Looks like he's gonna make it." He had broke his arm, dislocated his elbow, but those were the minor things. He had a traumatic brain injury, and then that's all I heard. Kuna was unconscious for 12 days. During that whole time, I knew that I had to educate myself on brain injury because I didn't know anything about it and I didn't know the terminology they were saying to me. So I went in the next day armed with articles, books, and my Bible. And that started, that was my life for the next 6 months.
The only thing I remember about coming out of my coma was that I was in a hospital with the netting around my bed.
I had been praying that when he wakes up, I just want him to know who I was. And when he woke up, I said, "Kuna, do you know who I am?" And he said, "Yeah, you're my mom." And I knew when he said that God was going to carry us through and that things were going to be okay.
I felt like it was a dream, and like whenever I go to sleep, I'd wake up and it'd all be normal again. My life before my accident was work, work, work.
To me, it was all about making money and buying things, and thinking of myself and giving myself the credit.
I'm rich, bitch. Yeah, how you like that? It ain't a whole lot, but it's enough to keep me happy for a minute.
Every 2 weeks, me and my buddies would get together and go shoot pool in memory of my roommate that passed away.
I jump on my motorcycle and I ride over to the pool hall, and a guy had pulled up in front of me. He said he didn't see me.
I received a traumatic brain injury because my brain shook inside my skull. So I have damage to my left temporal lobe, and that's responsible for my vision, so I'm partially blind. I have this is plates in my arm. Right here is a brain shunt. So it's a hose that goes all the way down to my stomach. And here's where the trach was.
Fortunately, he did have his helmet on, because I think he probably would not have survived without the helmet. You still can have severe concussion or contusion or actually traumatic laceration of the brain inside the helmet because of the force that the head in the helmet hits the object. If you think of the brain as jello and it's inside a bowl, the bowl in this case is the skull, and the skull is surrounded by the helmet in this particular case. So the jello can still go back and forth like this and get bounced against the skull and have contusions or lacerations and causing bleeding and swelling. Sometimes you have to have surgery to relieve the pressure. Most common, however, it is not a surgical procedure but intensive rehab, which needs to be carried out in these individuals as they recover from the traumatic brain injuries.
Very often patients coming into our program are really in a fairly weakened state, and they may have really significant problems with weakness on one side of their body. They may have real difficulty communicating, understanding what people say to them. They can have problems with their memory, their speed of thinking, their ability to stay on task and concentrate. This program is called the Center for Transitional Neurorehabilitation. We call it CTN for short.
Now I'm getting ready to go to CTN. Anthony's my ride. He usually has to check with me to make sure I have everything. Say hi to the camera, Mom.
Good morning.
I put it in the plan.
Here's my beautiful mom.
Oh, sweet.
Kuna is very typical of a lot of people coming here. He had a pretty severe traumatic brain injury, and he came here in January of '07. He had some physical problems in terms of his coordination and his walking and his endurance. He had some speech and language difficulties, so he was working on things like language skills, his ability to reason and problem solve, writing, reading, academics, things like that.
Okay, Kuna, I'm just going to have you tell me about your day yesterday. Just start from the beginning and tell me the things that you did all day.
Well, I came to CTN yesterday. I keep getting mixed up.
Rehab has changed. We're much more aggressive. We start rehab, we see patients in the ICU and the rehab doctor comes by and sees the problem, talks to the family, which is so important to have the family support, to participate part of the team, part of the rehab team. So all of that is helps now the individual from a traumatic brain injury recover much more than they had in the past.
Awareness is aware of what your disability is. So I guess I could start filing things in there.
I think that'd be a great idea.
When patients first come to the program and early on after these injuries, they don't tend to necessarily be aware of what the difficulties are.
It's a long time, yeah. It's time for an upgrade.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I'll give you this stuff. Why don't we do a little bit of word fluency?
I wasn't aware that I was disabled, and I had difficulties due to my traumatic brain injury, my vision loss.
Fluency task, like we used to.
Awareness is a double-edged sword. As people's knowledge and understanding goes up about what the difficulties are, the double-edged part of it is that their emotions can start to go downhill some.
This is where I'm at now. I was at St. Joseph's Hospital and I was at my parents' house. One week and my parents said, we want to take you somewhere. We're in a car and we're driving to this neighborhood and I was like, wow, this neighborhood looks familiar, and I was recognizing things. We pull up to this house and we go inside. My mom says, Kuna, this is your house. It was like a shock. I didn't know that I owned all these things because of my brain injury. I kind of forgot things.
I think as a society, we don't have a very good understanding of the effects of brain injury. We have an attitude that when people sustain a brain injury, it's kind of like breaking any bone in the body, so to speak, where there's a healing process and maybe in a few weeks or a couple of months, people are back to normal. And so I think we underestimate the level of need that there is for the resources for people. The acceptance phase, which is really helping people cope and adapt and start to come to terms with what the changes are. And that's an evolving process.
Kuna had to learn how to brush his teeth, how to use utensils, how to drink water, how to shave, how to use the bathroom. He had to learn all of that all over again. Everything that Kuna learned in 26 years of his life, he had to relearn in 6 months. So with our family giving him and being by his side, we were in essence repeating. We would go with him to his therapies and repeat during the day what they taught him. And that is what helped Kuna progress through as quick as he did.
Acceptance was a problem that I had, because I wasn't accepting that, hey, Kuna, you have difficulties and you have a disability, so you got to use compensations.
People experience a lot of grief and a lot of losses because the path they were on in life may be now a different path. And it takes time and it takes a lot of empathy and it takes a lot of healing. We provide a lot of education and a lot of support for families, so then when they're with their families outside of the treatment hours, the family members can help support them and talk to them and give them ideas.
It was difficult as a parent seeing him have to struggle, seeing a 26-year-old man not know how to use utensils, not know how to shave himself. But he was a quick learner, and once we did it a couple times, then he would say, Mom, I can do it myself, and he would.
My girlfriend is very supportive and she understands my disability and my new life, I guess, as far as me going to church and not drinking. What I can and can't do, she understands because she has things she can and can't do because she also has a brain injury.
I had a brain tumor removed in August of 2000. I was entering my 5th year as a senior at ASU when that happened. So kind of put a little road bump in my plans.
I saw her at the support groups and she's attractive and she's smart. I always like girls that are real smart and real book smart. Like I grew up being the bad boy, not real book smart, just kind of being the wise guy.
I look where I'm walking.
I'm one with trouble walking.
So do I.
But I was always attracted to girls that were book smart, that always impressed me, and it's always what I went after. And so she caught my attention.
when I first met Kuna, I didn't know him. I mean, we went bowling with some group. He walked me out to my car. He asked me for my phone number, and I'm like, I'm not giving my phone number out to some weird guy. But, you know, he does have good qualities about him, so here's my email.
Rejected.
He didn't even take my email.
Because I thought you were just like shooting me down in a nice way.
And I wasn't.
Eventually, she gave in, and I got our phone number. Realism is the real world, you know, your introduction from the hospital to the real world, realism, what you can and can't do, and what you're capable of doing. I can't drive, but I have to. My compensation is taking the bus or carpool. There's my ID.
When his brain slammed against the curb, it pulled wires apart. Sometimes the brain can function and get those wires back together, sometimes they don't. In Kuna's instance, they didn't. So he doesn't have his right peripheral vision. He still mourns the loss of driving, but he realizes that it's not safe.
Step Street, transfer to Route 7.
I can't remember things, so my compensation is using a date book, and that's what CTN is known for, is they teach you how to use a date book.
Okay.
That's basically part of your brain.
So just sit down and then go through everything that's in here and decide what to file and what to keep in your date book.
Off to work we go.
We help people make good judgments and kind of rebuild their lives. So if they're not able to go back to the type of work that they did before, the idea is to help them find something that's productive, that's meaningful, that's fulfilling, so that they start to kind of reconstitute what they tend to call like a new me, a new identity after these injuries.
It is not unusual to survive the injury but be a different individual. Fortunately, apparently in this instance, the individual had a phenomenal recovery, but it's not unusual to not be back to the normal individual that they were prior to the accident.
Only about 15% of our patients go back to doing exactly what they did before their injury.
My living has changed as far, you know, I don't live in a house anymore because I can't afford a house, so I live in an apartment, and then I don't make as much money as I used to make at my drafting job, so I work, you know, making minimum wage. My job at the grocery store, you know, so my pay is not the same. But I've learned to live with it. I just can't go out like I used to. I can't go out to eat as much anymore, and I have to learn to live within my means.
Kuna, can we get courtesy service direction 5, please, Kuna?
Even so, the individual might not be up to the point where they were before, yet doing something that keeps them going in the morning, keeps them fried in the evening when they come home and saying, yes, I did a day's work. That is very important with somebody's individual personality, character, and ego.
It makes me feel as though I'm good for something. I actually need to work.
The smallest things that he can do, he just enjoys doing them.
You want a hand outside, ma'am?
The whole idea was to get all the different components of his life situated for him so that he could be independent and productive. And then he graduated the program and continued in the workforce.
I'm amazed at God's work because even though he still has a little bit of gait problems and he can't see, I'm amazed that he can function as much as he does. When I look at him, I know that God's at work. And I'm very thankful. Sorry. I'm very thankful that God gave him a second chance. And I know he realizes that too.
I thank God for that second chance, you know, because I could have not been given that second chance. So I gotta take advantage of it. I love my family and I wish I could have showed them before that I want to be a part of their lives, you know. Instead of trying to show them now, I'm just like working kind of backwards. I shouldn't have taken an accident for me to get closer to my family. I should have started that way from the get-go.
He has really turned his life around.
We all like to look at ourselves in the mirror at the end of the day and says, you know, I contribute something to society, to our community, to the family, to the social network that we're part of.
Being disabled, it could happen to anybody, you know. It's not being disabled isn't something that happens to people who are low income or born different, you know. Getting a disability can happen to anyone. It doesn't discriminate.
He said that at first he felt as though the accident was punishment.
Basically, I thought I was being punished by, you know, being selfish and fast and just kind of thinking about myself. So I thought God was like, Kuna, I'm gonna show you, what, you know.
And then you met me.
That's true.
And
You're
I
like
was
the blessing, though.
I was totally living my life good, and it's happened to me, so it didn't matter.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
I believe that we care about one another in a way where we can support people that have suffered different types of injuries into a milieu where they then are in a situation where they can be productive.
With me, I'm in a church and everything and trying to live life right. And there was a preacher at my mom's church that says, you don't date who you don't feel like you're gonna marry. So that's my hopes. And I have a little promise ring that I've given her. So that's my promise to be there.
To give me a bigger rock?
Yes.
I am so proud of what Kuna has accomplished and what he continues to do. I have no doubt that Kuna will someday, if he hasn't already, amaze people and be able to say, I have a brain injury, and if I can do it, you can do it.
I want to give people hope. Like, I was in the hospital. I had to learn how to walk again. Had to learn to live on my own again. Had to get a job. You know, like I said, starting off at minimum wage, and I had to learn to just do everything all over again. It's just you got to be patient. Like they taught me at CTN, TTT. Things take time. You got to believe in yourself.